right, before we get started, I want to remind everybody about our cordiality rules, that we listen to each other and we don't talk over each other. Each of you, as you raise your card, I'll call on you. You have a minute to a minute and a half to present your position. If we have time, I'll call on people for a second time, but it depends on how packed our agenda is and how far along we've gotten. And most importantly, listen to what other people just have to say, so that if you add something, it is, helps with the discussion. All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. And I would ask that in order to do that, the one thing we need to do is have everybody at the table. If you're going to be a guest, we have you sit in the back of the room, but if you're a member, you need to sit at the table so that I can call on you when, if you want to be heard. If you're not sitting at the table, I can't call on you. All right, so let's move on. We'll go around and introduce ourselves. Start with Sylvia.
Sylvia, I'm the Executive Director of Southwest Neighborhoods.
Ron Gurian, Chairperson of Maplewood.
Gary Runge, Land Use.
Robert Lennox, President, South Burlingame Neighborhood Association.
Jackie Phillips, Homestead Neighborhood Association.
Ed Fisher, Homestead Neighborhood Association, just a guest.
Well, guests are welcome
Thank you.
and valued.
Kendall Kick, Hayhurst Secretary.
A new representative for Hayhurst neighborhood.
Yes, welcome, Kendall.
Janet Hawkins, secretary. Fran Red from Collinsville.
Melanie Billington, Secretary, Southwest Hills Residential League, and taking the place of Nancy, who's sick today.
All right, Emily. Marie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. Marie Tyball, Hillsdale Neighborhood Association. And Sylvia, I should mention too, I'm videotaping.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sam Pearson, guest.
All right, Eric, you want to introduce yourself?
Eric Wilhelm, guest from Hillsdale.
Great.
Don
Alright.
Knock, Hillsdale Business Professional Association.
Laura Campos, Equity Committee. Kim Silverman, Public Safety Committee Chair.
Bruce Kiss from Ashby Neighborhood Association.
Marianne Fitzgerald, Vice Chair, Crestwood neighborhood.
George Brannis, Far Southwest Neighborhood.
Katie Dealey, Arnold Creek.
Ed Davis, Vice Chair, Multnomah Neighborhood.
David Martin, Transportation Committee.
Catherine Christensen,
Leslie Hammond, President.
Lee Bueller, Treasurer, I live in Homestead Neighborhood.
And we are expecting John. I'm not quite sure where he is, but we'll start without him. We have a quorum, so I'd like to get a motion to approve the agenda. There's Steve Mullen. I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda.
So made.
Second.
Okay, so we have Katie moved to approve the agenda and David seconded.
I move an addition to talk about the letter you wrote in response to Shannon's request for information.
Okay, he's made a motion to add an item to the agenda, which is to discuss the demand for 10 years worth of documents by one of our board members.
Actually, it's to discuss a letter to the request.
All right, that's fine. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
All right. All in favor of adding it to the agenda? I will add it down at the very bottom under new business.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. And we have 2 representatives from Arnold Creek.
I need to announce that I'm filming, I'm live streaming, and I'm Sharon Keast.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Sharon. I didn't know what that was about. All
Leslie,
right.
was there any abstentions on that?
I was gonna abstain, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, me too.
I'm sorry, Marianne. What was your point?
I'm abstaining because I don't know what he's talking about.
About what Rob's talking about? Okay, fine. All right, so, Jack.
I just have a question for Sharon. We're live streaming or videotaping and putting, what did we decide?
We are live streaming right now.
Is that what we decided last month?
I had no say in the decision.
I think we did, Jackie.
We
I
did.
think
It's in the minutes.
The
Okay.
written minutes are the real record and the ones
And so
required by
we decide.
state law. But we
Okay.
can also live stream and put it on the
And
website.
then it's videotaped, it's put on later?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Thank
good
you.
question. All right, We're gonna add this agenda under new business after the other items that are on the list and try to get to it today. I need a motion for the minutes. The minutes went out a week after our last meeting. I think you've had a couple weeks to look at them. Do I have any revisions or additions to the minutes,
I don't know
Laura?
that we approved the minutes, the agenda.
Oh, excuse me. All in favor of approving the agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay. We have one abstention from Mary Ann.
Well, yeah, I abstained.
Okay, fine. Thank you. All right, so let's move on to our minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
Can I make a correction before that, or no?
Yes. Are you working on the minutes?
Yeah,
Okay, sure. of course.
yeah, I wanted to make a correction under, D, Treasurer's Report, number 2, Watershed application for partnership grant with, West Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District. And
Bottom of page 5, and then it goes over to the top
yeah,
of page 6.
so my corrections are on page 6. Let's see. Well, it refers in the second paragraph, Laura Campos said that she was disappointed, and I went and I reviewed the video. I had stronger language than disappointed. I said, it's very difficult for me, being a person of color, to really talk about this. It's hurtful because I run the equity committee, and it would have been a phone call or text message to tell me that they're piggybacking off my equity committee. We're using that to get this grant. And I also said minority women being invisible, and this is one way that institutions do it. I just want to express that to you, but without a context of what invisibility means. It means that all the work that me and my husband did for the last 5 years was being appropriated, and someone else was being credited with that in the grant and was going to receive a sizable remuneration. And so invisibility means when people of color will say something, but you're not acknowledged, but the credit is given to someone else. And the board went on as if nothing happened. So I wasn't disappointed, I was hurt. And I was having a difficult time expressing that. And then it says, so that there could have been more E&I committee. No, there hadn't been any. This idea that our work was gonna be, someone else was gonna take credit for it and be attached to a grant. That's not in our action plan. It's not in our racial equity policy. I never had any conversation with Jen about that. In fact, Glenn was the president when it first started. And then it says, Ms. Campos said that institutions sometimes make minority women invisible. No, I said minority women being invisible, and this is one way that institutions do it. I wasn't saying that sometimes, or it wasn't watered down like that. And then I asked for better communication and more awareness. I never said it. When you watch the videotape, it doesn't say that.
So,
Because
Laura,
how can you have better communication if there was none at all?
how do you want to amend the minutes?
Okay, I want that testimony verbatim as it was on the tape. This is very difficult for me, being a person of color, to really talk about this. It's hurtful because I run the equity committee, and it would have been a phone call or text message to tell me, we're using that to get this grant. Minority women being invisible, and this is one way that institutions do it. I just want to express that to you. I would like those words, that come verbatim from the video.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the board what they wanna do, because Robert Rules of Order says we're not supposed to be reporting things verbatim. We're supposed to do sort of a general description of what happened. So do you want to board, do you want to include her language exactly as she said it, which would be verbatim, or do you want to go with a shorter paragraph about what Laura has said? What
The
does she
shorter
want to do?
paragraph misrepresents me. I move to add Laura's words verbatim.
Okay,
I second.
all right, Rob's seconding. All in favor,
Oh,
or any
second.
discussion? All in favor of adding the language that Laura wants verbatim, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Welcome, Debbie. You're welcome, yeah. All right. Any other amendments to the minutes? Katie?
Page 3, A1, third paragraph, fourth sentence, but express discomfort with creating a new role called parliamentarian. It's just missing the last two words at the end of that sentence.
So it's page 3A, what paragraph is it?
A1, third paragraph, fourth line, but express discomfort with creating a new role called parliamentarian.
Did you get that, Janet? Okay. Any discussion? All right. All in favor of adding this revision, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Now, any further revisions to the minutes? All right. Then I'll ask the board to vote. All in favor of the minutes as revised, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Fran wants to abstain. Anybody else that wasn't here at the last meeting that needs to abstain? Gary needed to abstain, Kim needs to abstain, Ron needs to abstain, anybody else? Mary Ann needs to abstain, thank you. And Dawn needs to abstain. All right, good. Did you get all that, Janet? All right, the minutes have been approved. We're gonna move into the SWNI Executive Committee report. I'm gonna report to you on sort of on the status of where we are at 7 months, but before I do that, I'm gonna ask Melanie Billings-Young to give us an update on the candidates forum, which is happening April 23rd in the auditorium.
So I'm on the committee that's putting together the candidates forum. It's going to be held between 6:30 and 9 o'clock on Thursday, April 23rd, here at the Multnomah Arts Center. And we'll be doing it in collaboration with Neighbors West, Northwest. There's a heck of a lot of candidates. The mayor and city council are currently listing, or as of Monday, 41 people had registered. Of those, 27 have confirmed that they will be coming. 7 for the mayoral position, 3 for position 1, 6 for position 4, and a whopping 11 for position 2. As a result, we've extended the hours from originally 6:30 to 8:30. Now it's going to be 6:30 to 9. That still will give us only 4 minutes per candidate, which means that we will also have to be working very fast to be out by 9:30 when they close. And so at the end, I will be asking, it would be great if we could get 3 more volunteers that could help us just put chairs away and things like that. For the questions for the candidate forum, a lot of you have probably seen this. We sent out the survey that people could send in by SurveyMonkey from the neighborhood associations of what topics are most important to them. We also had it translated into Russian and into Spanish. We've had 91 responses so far, which is really good, but that means we're probably gonna have a really big turnout on the night. A quick rundown of what the #1 topics that people are interested in. The biggest one is homelessness, followed by affordable housing. Transportation comes in 3rd, residential infill is 4th. We've also had write-ins, and by far the biggest write-in is public safety. We've had 12 write-ins on that so far, followed by livability. Mark Sieber is going to be the moderator and timekeeper. He did it back in 2016. Given the large number of candidates, we probably will not be able to take questions from the floor, although we're still looking at that, but it looks pretty impossible. So based on what's been filled out and the write-ins that people have given us, We're going to prepare a list of questions in advance that will be asked of each of the candidates. We're also pre-sending an introduction to the candidates, which describes Southwest demographic makeup and major challenges. The major challenges are, some of them are listed as lack of sidewalks, watershed resources, and we also describe the ethnic mix of our neighborhood. We can't do it in detail because it's a pretty wide ethnic mix. I will tell you that on my street of 9 houses, we have English, Chinese, Indian, Russian, Korean, and Serbian. I have brought to this, and I got enough of these that 17 neighborhoods can take 5 each in English. These are voters' registration. Please take them and pass them out at your neighborhood association meetings. I've also got 25 in Spanish, and I have a smaller number in Russian, Chinese, and Somali, and more of the turbine monkey things. And finally, we have arranged, we cannot do childcare on the spot because it's simply going to be too crowded, but we have arranged for a Politicit childcare reimbursal for people who will need that. And our next meeting is going to be March 10th at 7 o'clock, and that is when our full candidate list will be ready. I'm just hoping it doesn't get much bigger.
Okay, and I just want to announce that Eric Brethy's Hillsdale Neighborhood Association is hosting a presentation at their next meeting, Wednesday, March 4th, regarding star voting. So you know, this isn't about the candidates, this is about a voting method. So he just wants to make sure everybody has the invitation. If you're interested, please attend the meeting.
May I ask a quick question? Is it better if I can just, you can come by and get these things before you leave, or should I just pass them around now? I mean, it's a little distracting when I do that, so shall I just wait?
Put them on that table there.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right, the voter registration forms will be on that table, and please, I'll try to remind you at the end about picking up voter registrations for your neighborhood. Eric, I can give you 1 minute. and
Think
we'll
about
go
the
on.
star voting, the group that's advocating for this voting method reform will be at the forum tabling or doing a handout, possibly with a ballot to do a star vote on the candidates along with a single mark ballot, so we could compare how if you only got to vote for one versus if you got to rate all of them.
Thank you, we really appreciate it.
Let's
All right, John.
With regard to the candidates fair, I would like to suggest, well, based on testimony that I've given City Council about transportation, it's very clear that several of our commissioners are totally uninformed about the relative scarcity of sidewalks, crosswalks, and so on in Southwest. So I'd like to suggest that we prepare a poster board that basically shows the statistics as reported by the city for these people to see, because these are the people that are asking to be the decision makers. And this is a good time to inform them about that, not taking time from the agenda, but having it visible in a good size so that they can see it.
Okay, you're saying you want to have a poster board. Did you like to
I'm just asking if
prepare?
there's any objections to it. I'll work on getting it together.
Okay, so his question for the board is, do you support the idea of having a poster board at the forum that describes the top transportation issues so the candidates can see it when they're sitting or up on the stage?
It's not transportation issues, it's really the relative
Sidewalk.
sidewalk, crosswalk issues of Southwest versus the rest of the city.
Yes, now,
All right.
statistics, yes.
Okay, so do you want to put that in the form of a motion?
I don't know, if there's no objections, we'll just do it.
No, we're going to do it as a motion, Don.
You really want a
Do you want to make it
motion?
as a motion?
I move that we have a poster board to display Southwest transportation statistics relative to the rest of the city.
Thank you. We got a second from Steve. Any further discussion on this?
I'd like to propose an amendment that Dawn does it.
Katie, don't forget to
You
raise
may
your
not
card.
like what it looks like if I did that.
All right, okay, it's been suggested that Dawn's neighborhood prepare this poster. George?
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there a reason why we have to start at 6:30 for the candidate forum? Why couldn't we start at 6? We're only gonna have 4 minutes.
Well, because what we're trying to do, George, is actually make sure that people can get there from work. And if you make it at 6, it's tougher for people to come and hear what's happening that early, so we were making it 6:30. That's what we were thinking about.
Yeah, but if it's only 4 minutes, then it's going to be pretty useless. What are you gonna hear from somebody in 4 minutes?
Melanie, would you like to respond to this?
Well, the big issue is the candidates themselves now, because the invitation was sent out to them that it would begin at 6:30. I suppose it is something that we could bring up, but asking, it would then be a 3-hour event. I don't have any personal problem with it, it's just, then people are gonna largely miss the early things at 6 o'clock, and it takes you right through dinner, it's kind of rough. I don't know,
Prep for 10 council hearings.
Excuse me, Tad?
Point of order, there's a motion on the table.
All right, there is a motion on the table.
Poster.
And we had discussion, which was a question from George. We had an answer to that. Any further discussion on the idea of poster board? Thank you. I got distracted. All in favor, say aye.
I,
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, all right. It
I got a
carries.
comment. I think there's money, isn't there, from Civic Life or something for food? I mean, if we're worried about getting people early there?
I'm sorry, the accommodation fund, I have told, is out of money, and you're not.
Furthermore, I'm not sure where we put it, because with 41 candidates and their staffs and the people that are coming, and the gym only holds 190 to 200 people, or not the gym, but the auditorium, it would be tough to do. Okay, all right. Anything else?
Well,
All right.
I don't think we resolved the 6 o'clock thing.
Should I make a motion?
Why don't you refer it back to the committee, George,
Okay.
and let them work on it, and we'll call you. How's that sound?
Well, yes.
All right.
My concern is that we publicized it for 2 months at 6:30, so. All right. Good points, all good points. All right, what I wanted to talk to, as president, I just want to talk about what we've done over the last 7 months, because I wanted to sort of illustrate some of the things that we've been successful in. We had a very successful summit this summer, where we drew people from all over the city, from neighborhoods, and alerted them to the code revision and the intention to take the words neighborhoods out of the code revision. We were successful in actually not having that happen. City Council did not support that code revision. And there is a second resolution that's coming from Commissioner Udaley's office, but it hasn't been set for a hearing date yet, and we don't have the final language. Secondly, we had several successful nights out with thousands of people in attendance. We have extra numbers to support that. We had a lot of successful block parties and movie parties, and actually the movie parties are a great way to bring your neighborhood together, because we get not only people from our neighborhood, but we can get people from other neighborhoods, and people socialize, their kids come, their dogs come, so it's really fun. So that's one of the things that we do that I think we're very successful at. We've also collaborated on projects in improving playgrounds, building trails, putting up school murals, planting native plants, many other things to improve the livability of the neighborhood. So despite all the things that we've been faced with, which are 10 initiatives from the city, all the things that have been going on, this coalition have been quite successful this year. We have our financial records in tip-top shape, because they've been reviewed for the last 18 months, dollar by dollar, by our treasurer. And so I feel very confident that all of our procedures are being followed, and that we are in good shape in terms of reporting on what we have and what we spent. We've got, Sylvia and I figured this out for our newspaper article, and I just want to mention this, and she's going to follow through on her report and point out some things I'm not pointing out, but we've had roughly 27,000 people a year engage in all the different events that we're either partners on or that we've actually sponsored and paid for ourselves. So that's pretty, and we have about a little over 70,000 people in the 17-person neighborhood, so that's quite effective. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to John to report as first vice president.
Yes, 2 items that I committed to being involved in last month were the parliamentarian. I apologize, I had hoped to The subcommittee has met twice. Steve Mullenix, George Ranos, myself have been working on it. We've all turned in written proposals for a job description for the parliamentarian. I had hoped to kind of consolidate those and get them ready for presentation today. But other things related to my homeowners association came up and I was not able to get those done. So we'll report next month on parliamentarian things. We may send it out by email before then so people are aware of what's going on in that.
We actually have a parliamentarian here tonight, a certified state parliamentarian in the form of Tad Davis, who's from Multnomah.
Tad's one of the people that we opened it for comments and presentations. We've had people attend each of our meetings, and Tad sent in some information. And I'm sorry I didn't make it here earlier to ask him some questions. We also hope to contact one other neighborhood coalition to get some feedback on some of the things that they do around the position. So,
thank you, Jimmy.
and the other thing is I've also been in contact with NEDC regarding the MS4 permit, and NEDC has checked with the state on the schedule for the MS4 permit. Our understanding, their understanding is that it will not be dealt with much before, if before the first of the year. So we have some months to prepare for that.
Thank you.
Any questions?
All right, I'm gonna ask the second vice president to do her report, and I'm gonna move out of the way so that she can do it.
I have paper to back up the pictures here. So I'm going to be talking to you about the West Portland Town Center project. That is where.
Can everybody hear Catherine? Okay, good.
Maybe you might want to stand up just for.
I'll stand up to you. I'm passing out to you the announcement and a reminder to go, if you can at all, to the open house that's being held on March 4th. At 6 p.m. at Markham School. That is where the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability gets a lot of information from us as to how we would like to guide them in planning the West Portland Town Center. And I've given you a copy of the draft Town Center goals. These apply with or without the Southwest Light Rail. So it's not dependent on the Southwest Light Rail to have the Town Center be built. The Town Center would, with the light rail, accommodate a lot of the displacement in people that can no longer afford to live along the light rail system if it were to become the case. But the city has been planning through the Comp Plan 2035 to have a town center in this area. So it's regardless of. And I wanted to point out on the second side of that page that there is a list of priorities that have been developed with a number of, they're hires, they're consultants, that's right, Consultants Unite Oregon, Hackey and Community Alliance of Tenants, who've gone from neighbor to neighbor in engaging with them, the low-income renters, immigrants, and communities of color in the area to develop this list of priorities that go along with these goals to inform the city as to how that town center should be developed. The next page, you've got a picture of what's in the Southwest Light Rail, and it's the center station for the Barber Crossing there at the Barber Transit Center. Idea of what the town center hub might look like if the light rail were to be built in that area. So this is with the station being in the center of Barber. There's another proposal that I didn't have a copy of the picture for if the station were to be actually on the site of Barber there and more integrated into what now is the parking lot at the transit center. And then what I also wanted to do is give you the layouts of what I have just received, because a couple of us are on the Community Advisory Council for the Southwest, for the West Portland Town Center. Three of the, they call these things, the scenarios of what they would like to do for rezoning along the length of the town center. And I have them on video, or on mute.
Get a timeout.
Yeah, I got it timed out. What do you do now?
As usual, technology fails us.
Lee, can you reach
So-
over and turn the blue button on?
Oh, that one way down there, yes, I can. Anyway, I'm gonna just show you the pictures of these. They're
Top.
lovely. And I don't think you can get a hold of these pictures of the scenarios that they have proposed.
Here.
Do I unmute it now?
Did you touch the right button? I'm
I
not sure.
don't
Yeah. Anyway, if you were to look at them in color, you can get a grasp from the table down at the bottom, what kind of rezoning they would like to apply along. This one, the middle one? Yeah, oh, good, there they are. What they would like to do for rezoning. So these dots, which you just have a gray copy, but the dots correspond to the table here and the rezoning that they'd like to do. And this, so each of these different scenarios they've developed are to accommodate a similar number of houses or homes and workspace, and they would have higher density depending on how narrow they correspond, or they actually rezone right along Barker. So this one is a fairly broad application of rezoning, not quite as tall.
Can you, I can't read that from here. What's the east boundary and the west boundary of that rezoning, north boundary and south boundary?
So I think that's maybe 35th or 26th, 26th or 35th on that far edge.
Okay.
The highway in the middle.
Is this 53rd, Mary?
Yes.
Yeah.
53rd down this way?
53rd
So it's like about a 2-mile long portion of Barber
And
that
the
they're
bottom line
speaking
is
of.
what, Pomona?
Yeah.
And the upper one is,
Twenty-six.
26th or 30th, I think 26th.
well, Dalton.
Dolphin 26 is kind of the right one.
And then, could you briefly go through what the colors mean? I mean, I can't see a thing from
Do
here.
I have time for all that?
No, could we, Dawn,
think
I'm
what I
sorry, could
prefer
we
to-
do that during
What I prefer to do is ask if Sylvia can send these 3 slides to you all, and you can study them, but what I really want to encourage you to do, given, you need to just look at all this. Oh, I didn't get the right one. How do you get to the next slide? Oh, there's another slide, so here is less, it went by itself to the next one.
Are you pushing?
No.
But
I think it's doing itself. Anyway, yeah, it's totally doing itself.
I guess that's it.
Anyway, what I really want you to do is go to that open house, because they will present to you do a better job of what I can do. But it also, I think we need to get there and represent our neighborhoods. I want you to encourage your neighborhoods to go to that meeting, and communicate with them what our desires are too. Because I think, I have to say, I'm a little opinionated about this, and maybe there's more than just me that's a little opinionated about this, but the city seems to be listening a lot to those contractors who have gone out to a subset of our neighborhoods to ask them what they would like to see in that area.
Yeah, these first two pages are really important because these are driving the project, but it is being driven around the underserved people in this boundary area. And when I asked about community-based priorities for the West Portland Town Center plan, I asked if these culturally specific gathering places were open to the public, and I didn't get an answer for that. So those are the kinds of things that I really want to make sure of, is that if they're building facilities to serve the underserved people with our tax dollars, that we benefit from them because they should be public. we need a lot of improvements, but, it really has been driven through these three groups more than the community, at large.
And I think another thing that we are concerned about is that their funding for this is based on some funding that they have for affordable housing primarily, not for infrastructure. And so I think, like we've seen this many times in the past, they will build and they won't fund any of the improvements. For instance, they don't intend to improve and fix the crossroads, which is the hub of this area. And if they, they haven't told us what the target numbers are for additional homes in this area or business square footage, but if they put that much more demand on this area for traffic and for just transportation in general, and no infrastructure improvements.
And no parking.
No parking, no figuring out what to do with the water flow. There's a lot of things that seem that they will not fund other than through the building of more structures. And I think we need to really be able to communicate how important that is to our neighborhoods too.
So we encourage you to go to that open house, and if there's time, Catherine might answer some other questions in the transportation area that David cedes some time to her. All right, our next report is from Lee Bueller on our financial reports.
Okay, this report is for January 2020, which is the 7th month of our fiscal year. And for January, there's really not much to say. We're right on target. There are a couple things. One is the advertising was low, but we expect that to even out next few months. It's just the variation. The other thing is we had a high accounts receivable, which kind of set things off. But we got that payment like 3 days ago or a week ago or something like that. So that evens everything out. Charlie pointed out, Charlie's helping with me, which I appreciate, but he pointed out it was the same thing last year. Civic Life was a little bit late on their payment, so I think the first of the year. Now for year to date, we're actually doing a little bit better at this point. That can vary, but right now, we're about 2,000 better on the bottom line than we projected at this point. So, does anybody have any questions about where we are the month of January or year to date or anything? We're pretty much right on target, or maybe a little bit better. Okay, then we still need to do our 990 tax return for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. And Charlie has been sending us drafts, and we think we're down to minor spelling errors, and I think we've got all those fixed. And we're going to send you a copy of this, and we need to approve it next month, and your name is in it. So if you can go over it, and so it'll make next month's meeting go a lot faster if you go over it, come up with questions. And the numbers part's just the first page, and you can just compare it from last year. It's not too much numbers, but if you can read over, one thing about the 990s I like is it shows everything SWNI does. So if you can read over, maybe we forgot something, maybe things could be worded different or something like that. But so if you could just read over it and let me know if you have any questions, or be prepared to discuss it next month. It'd be great. Thank you.
Really, this is a snapshot of our whole year, where we spent our money, what money we took in, what our programs are, what our focus is. So it's not bedtime reading, it's actually sit down and read it. It's really actually quite interesting, and it will inform you as to what money was spent and where and for what purpose. We have these online. If you guys approve this next month, we'll put this up on our website, and then anybody who is interested in how SWNI's money is spent will be on the website.
When can we expect to see the 990 in our inbox?
I think the next few days, because we did some spelling corrections and sent it back to them.
So you're just gonna send us a link
Or
a copy of it?
copy of it?
I think we'll send a copy of it, or we can put it on the board materials.
Link's better.
A link is better.
Okay.
And we'll have some explanation, because it's a pretty big document, so.
Great.
One of the things that it does show in our expenses is how much goes to programming and how much goes to management. So just about, I think it was 3.5% goes to management. Everything else that we do is all going towards programming. So that's an important number to learn.
That's a good rule of thumb. Yeah. Okay.
It's amazing everything Sweeney does, and so it's kind of good to be reminded of that every year. Okay, the next thing we need to talk about is an application from Collins View for a fiscal sponsorship, and I'm kind of excited about this. It's not the biggest one we've ever done. In fact, it might be the smallest one. But it's you have in your packet, it's
Page
science,
20, look for page 20.
science and nature, and I think it's an exciting thing. It's another thing for in Sweeney, Feather and Sweeney's Cap, and they're going to see how it goes. And you know, I'd like to do 2 of these a year. They're $160 each, but they'd like to be ongoing. And if people read that, have any questions about it?
What are they going to do? You haven't said what it is.
Well, why don't you let Fran?
Yeah.
Fran, do you want to?
Fran, would you like to speak to it?
We did our first one in October, and it was the Crow Talk, and we had, 80 people show up for it in the auditorium. Then we have one in April that's going to be a songbird presentation, and Jay Withoff from Audubon is coming to do that for us. And we've also reserved the auditorium for a West Side Wildlife Corridor in October to do that. And what we really want to do, I mean, you can see the breakdown. We want to be able to raise $147.50 for the rental of the auditorium, $15 for the printing of posters, which we've taken on ourselves. All we're asking is like, as if it's a sign cap account or a bench account, that kind of thing. We want to separate the money out from Collins View and not
So you're
have
asking
them.
permission from the board to have
set
us
it up.
prepare, have a
And then we would have, on the collinsview.org site, have a button, a donate button, that people can use to help us out with that. Because bottom line is, we won't be able to do this because we can't fund it ourselves.
Is there a motion to support the
Yes,
Collins
from the
View?
finance.
All right.
Yeah, the
Okay.
finance committee.
The finance committee has approved this?
Yes.
Okay, and so any further discussion on what this is? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next thing is the small grant. And I've gone through them, we went through them, a bit at the finance committee, and I'm kind of excited about all of them. I wasn't involved in it too much, so Sylvia, if you want to talk.
Yeah, so actually, the way this works is we have our grant selection committee members, and they did a great job. They were very excited about these proposals. They had 9 proposals submitted, and they selected the top 5 and sent out awards. And then what we have to do as a board is to say, yes, we approve this action, and then we have the money come in from Civic Life, and then we disperse it as a board. So for me, this is to ratify that decision. If anyone had any questions or concerns, you would raise them now. But I think all of them are on the front page of the paper this month, very, very much in line with what the grant goals and guidelines are, and some pretty creative new ideas. So I think Janet was on the committee, and you want to say anything? I see you, Lisa.
All excellent proposals, so really high quality. It was fun to read and see all the ideas, which was great. And then Laura, I was going to ask you to pronounce the proposal for the festival. I'm sorry, how's it? Ina.
Chinookwawak, that's the language that was spoken around here.
And so lots of things happening in the neighborhood with these proposals.
Yeah.
All the neighborhoods.
Are there any comments or any objections or anything to any of these? Yeah.
All right.
So it's a motion from the finance committee to approve the small grants.
All in favor of approving the small grants as they're written and with the numbers and the information on them, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Any abstentions? All right. Then we're going to move on to Sylvia, who's going to make a report to all of us.
Okay. So I want to just point out at the end of my report, there is the SWNI 6-month report to Civic Life, which Leslie mentioned. And the link, when you go to the board materials, will actually take you right to that report. So it's connected. And then it's also under the neighborhood board handbook. And you'll see where a link to our current contract is, and just below that are the Civic Life reports, so that you can take a look at it. It's a 19-page report. So a lot happens in 6 months. And Civic Life changed the reporting period. It used to be quarterly, now it's 6 months. So there's a lot that we have to get in there. And it's pretty impressive work from everyone. We also include in there where the contract dollars are going. So what resources are we providing to our neighborhood associations? So after we highlight some of the events that are going on, we tell them, what is our communication tools and how many newsletters we send out. And on this particular time period, that was included the July all household mailing. So that went to 34,000 households. We had a newspaper every month, which is unique to each coalition area. We had 26 events, 26 ongoing monthly meetings, 57 active partnerships, 10 small grants that we processed during that time period. We maintained 39 fiscal sponsorship accounts, and then all of the wonderful programs to the Watershed Resource Center. So I hope you'll take a look at that report, give me some feedback. It is long, and again, this is Civic Life's template, but if you have suggestions or if we forgot something, please let me know. The next thing I want to just mention is, as Lee said, we're a little under budget in the advertising. So this month, there's a 4-page insert that Bureau of Environmental Services puts in on the garlic weed mustard, or garlic mustard weed. Yeah, thank you. And that means I have to squish 6 pages of neighborhood news into 4.5. And we have to reduce some of the other reporting that we do. And so there's a bit of where's my neighborhood this month? Because Corey was trying to fit this puzzle together. So there is, I think there's 3.5 pages, and then it ends after the BES insert. So you have to kind of look for your announcement. Next month, we'll have another 4-page insert from Bureau of Environmental Services, because it's their annual Watershed Open House. That will be on the same night as our board meeting, but it's just before, so you don't have an extra night. You can stop in next door and then come over here. But that means that we will have less space again, so I'm asking neighborhoods to please consider maybe your articles to be in that area between 300 and 400. We still want a photo, because that really draws the eye to your article and what's going on. So thank you for your cooperation and understanding. And we've sold some extra ads, and I will continue to look for those. So, and then I just want to mention on the budget proposal that was submitted by Civic Life, we as nonprofit coalitions stayed the same funding with a proposed 2.9 COLA for personnel. But we found out when I was going through the budget that was submitted, that the breakdown for our area is off on the staff, the number of staff. So it looks to us like they reduced the staff hours for North Portland office, which is a city office. And I think you'll probably hear some things in the news, or they'll do a presentation at the budget workshop that's scheduled before City Council on March 5th at 4 o'clock. And so it was almost what I could figure, it was like a $26,000 hit. So we're hoping to find some clarity on this. I think the residents in North Portland, though, will be asking some questions. And I just wanted to give you a heads up on that issue. And then the mayor's community conversation, again, is Saturday, March 7th. And I'm hoping a lot of people will be able to come. It's from 9 a.m. until noon. They have had really large turnouts. And so we're a little bit worried because the space that we had was the gym, which is not ideal, but there's a theater production in the auditorium. So we have now convinced the Art Center, and they were very gracious to let us use the dance studio to start this, which is a much better space, has better light. So we'll start the event in the dance studio, and then if we have overflow, we'll have the gymnasium set up, and it'll have live streaming so people can watch what's going on in the dance studio. So please put that on your calendar. And then finally, spring cleanup is coming our way. So if you'll remember, we have less money for our bulky waste drop boxes. We were only allowed 11 boxes. We used 9 in the fall, so we have funding for 2 boxes. Last spring, we had 14 boxes is what we used. And we had 614 cars or something like that. So the executive committee really felt like they want to give people an opportunity to get rid of bulky waste items. A lot of this is to prevent people from just being so frustrated that they dispose of things down ravines and open areas. We want to help, and having it local makes sure people bring it to the site. Some people hesitate about driving out to the transfer station. So, which is an option. So our line is a lot faster, and we're hoping that we were proposing that we do bulky waste this last in spring, but to make up the difference, we're suggesting and it's a suggested fee of $30. So we have been suggesting $20. If you're looking at the transfer site, sometimes it depends on what you take there, but I think on average visit is probably around $40. So we're hoping this still is affordable to people, and again, it's suggested, but if we charge $30, I'm thinking we'll be able to meet our cost and still bring in our budget item of $3,000. So we have to think a little of that.
So I think, just to add another spin on this, is that at the next board meeting, we'll ask you whether you want to go ahead and authorize the spring cleanup folks to go ahead and spend some of our budget money for the box.
I need a straw vote now, because we have to advertise this in the next month's newsletter, and my deadline is March 15th. So are there any, can you raise hands, do you think $30 is a reasonable fee? It's just a straw vote, not an official.
Oh, okay, I'm not in
$30
support
for
of
what?
30, I'm in support of 25, and
Per
here's
car.
why, per car, because people are paying 20 to come, that's what they're used to, or they pay $5 and they go around the corner and get rid of their wine
They're
corks
recyclables.
and their recyclables, right? If we go to 30, it's a big jump from 20, so I would like you to consider $25 per car, and which will still give us enough money, I believe, to buy the boxes that we need to support for bulky waste and make the money that we need for ourselves.
So what's on the table?
25 or 30.
40 or 25?
We have a comment.
I was wondering if it would be possible to, do the people that drive out and do the community service and bring those back, do they make sure that those people pay as well, or if they donate?
Yeah, they're asked for their donation, just like everybody else suggests a
Okay,
donation.
all right.
And I think that everybody really tries to contribute, yes.
Anyone, and thank you, Kendall. Anybody else that wants to comment on this or has some wisdom? Fran?
I paid $45 2 days ago to have that important couch table.
So what does that mean?
That was 45,
One
I wish
item.
I'd saved them. $50 even.
So are you saying you would lean towards $30 instead of $25?
I don't think that's exorbitant at all. I think that's fair. I think that the only thing is it's not something people can pull out of an ATM machine.
Right.
Oh, right, you can pull out a 20 versus
Yeah.
10.
Katie?
Do you have any information on how much of those cars that you said, 697 cars?
614.
14, I made them 97 up. On how many provided bulky waste as opposed to 4
We don't.
bags? Okay.
What I would say, since I took most of the money in with another guy named Bob, is we got a lot of $20 bills this year because people had a lot of bulky waste. And that's really what they wanted to dispose of. And it was more than what I saw in the fall or the spring the year before. So I do think we have people who figured this out and would like to bring them, but we were counting $20 bills and we were not counting how many people chose that.
So, but I can tell you though that, and we charge $5 for recycling. If you're just doing recycling, we only charge the $5. And again, all of this is suggested. So when you actually averaged out the 600 cars that went through and the money that we took in was over 5,000, it was not $20 a carload. So people were paying like 10.
How about paint, hazardous, what?
No.
We don't do that. We do restrict what we got.
Saving.
You can take paint to a lot of places. It's on our website.
Any other comments before we vote? All right, I need a motion. Somebody,
I move to raise the fee to $30 for the cleanup. Suggested donation.
We don't turn anybody away.
we also ask them to run. You would have less money if there were different people at the top of the hill. Okay, is there a second?
Yeah, Jackie second.
Jackie, okay, we've got a first and a second. All in favor of increasing the fee to $30, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody want to abstain? Okay, all right, $30 it is.
I'm done.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to our committee reports, and we're going to start with Kim Silverman with her motion, which is in the packet, and it's on page 25.
Thank you. Part of the Public Safety Committee's mission that's written down in the description of standing committees is the promotion of growth of the Neighborhood Watch program. And at the time the city stopped supporting the Neighborhood Watch program, there were about 400 active neighborhood watches, business watches, and apartment watch programs. And it came to the committee's attention that Commissioner Daly, who is in charge of the bureau that used to oversee the Neighborhood Watch program, Civic Life, gave an interview on OPB where she described the Neighborhood Watch program as essentially 3-foot patrol groups. And so it became apparent to the committee that she may have been misinformed about what the Neighborhood Watch program really was and how it brought neighbors together and created more resilient neighborhoods, included emergency preparedness, and it was a big driver of community safety, crime prevention, just sort of, the program has changed a lot. It used to be crime prevention, now it's community safety, and so losing Neighborhood Watch and losing crime prevention coordinators who could address other issues in neighborhoods like noise problems, chronic crime, all kinds of things. The list goes on and on, but they can't act as case managers anymore, the community safety coordinators. So the committee voted to ask you to authorize us to send a letter to Commissioner Daly. One of the big things we would like her to do is ask Dave Miller to return to Think Out Loud to correct the record with the official city stats about the state of the Neighborhood Watch program at the time it was discontinued. Well, support by the city was discontinued. And to post the correction on Civic Life's community safety program webpage. And we'd also like to invite Commissioner Daly to attend our May 7th, 2020 Public Safety Committee meeting to talk to Neighborhood Watch captains and people who belong to Neighborhood Watches about what it means to them and their neighborhoods.
Okay, this is a committee motion, so it doesn't need a second. Do we have questions for Kim? Don?
With the increased attention to homelessness and the petty crime associated with that, it seems to me we might also ask to consider expanding the Neighborhood Watch to include those kinds of issues as it makes sense. I don't have a plan saying, hey, I want to do this or that, but it seems to me they're very much related in terms of the homeless people running around, taking the recycle bins to their sites, and then people have to go hunt for them, and stealing propane bottles and so on and so forth. All of those are related to this in the same way, and it's the same kind of eyes on the street, I think, that affects it. So I just think you might get the mayor supporting it as well, and I would suggest copying the mayor on the letter.
Okay, that's an amendment to the motion.
That was a suggestion.
Suggestion, all right. Laura?
Well, I'd be in favor of that if it was also vice versa, because it's been
What's
shown,
vice versa mean?
well, because it's been shown that homeless people are also victims
Yes.
of crimes.
Absolutely.
So I think it goes both ways, that's
And-
vice versa.
And if I could add to that, our committee has been very careful about never equating homelessness and crime, because we're very aware that homeless people are a vulnerable population and victimized at a rate that, you know, none of us could really even comprehend, so.
Other questions? Okay, Mary Ann?
Well, I'm a neighborhood watch captain, and the big thing is communication. I mean, that's what we do, is make sure that people know how to report things properly and how to get information they need. And a lot of times, all I do is just point them in the right direction, and they like having that on the block. So, you know, I think your letter's fine, just the way it is. I don't suggest amending it at all.
Steve and then Katie.
Yeah, there's just a quick point of information. I'm not up to speed on the history, so you say that the Neighborhood Watch program was discontinued?
Support of it was discontinued, so what?
And when was that?
That was in July of this year, well, 2019, sorry,
Okay,
this fiscal year.
okay. But there's still volunteers doing some of that work, such as Mary Ann just mentioned.
So we had a meeting where community safety coordinators came, and I'm sorry, I don't remember which month it was, but we had community safety coordinators come, and they told us that we didn't have to take our, existing neighborhood watches didn't have to take our signs down. It's just that the city was no longer a supportive outlet.
Thank you.
Katie?
Are you receptive to minor edits sent directly to you?
Minor edits, do you wish to make them?
I'd rather just not take up the board's time.
Okay,
Minor.
all right, fine. All right, any other comments? All right, all in favor of supporting the Public Safety Committee's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you, it's passed, and we'll make that part of the record.
And as one plug from the Public Safety Committee, we are having our Emergency Preparedness Fair on Sunday, March 8th. That's our Spring Forward Day. And we're hoping that people come. It's been amazing, the reception from the neighborhood nets. We're gonna have a really cool beacon information booth, and we got the Franz truck to come and bring grilled cheese sandwiches. And there's gonna be a lot of things to give away. Civic Life is going to share a booth with the Public Safety Committee. These are not things for you to just take home, but if you could share them with businesses or schools or anyone in your neighborhood so we can advertise. I'm not getting tons and tons of help with publicity, but if you could take some and spread the word, I'd appreciate it.
Will you put those over on the table there?
Absolutely.
That's great. Everybody understand that? Jack?
Is that up on the website so I can?
Yes, and
Put it in my
it's the
email.
full page in the newspaper this month, so
Okay.
page 2.
No, I wanted link to it from my email.
Oh, yes.
To the electronic.
Good, great, all right, thank you. All right, let's move on to land use. That would be Gary.
Okay.
He's written something, and you'll see it on page 27.
All right, so, restrict land use update to the residential infill project, otherwise known as RIP. So we've, again, this thing's gotten really busy. So we had January 15th and 16th, we had big public hearings down at City Council. And then based on all that input, the project management was asked to draw up a list of proposed amendments, basically from the input that surfaced through public testimony. So a lot of groups and individuals were proposing specific amendments, others were implying. So I have the list here. I'd like to go ahead and pass them around just so people have them. So I made 24 copies, should be enough. So this list of formal amendments was reviewed the city council on the 12th and released on February 13th. So SWNI Land Use took these amendments under discussion last Tuesday, February 18th at our meeting. And these are compliments of the subcommittee, Leslie and Susan King are running. So the main report out tonight is item number 5, is that our land use committee has decided not to select any specific amendments or group of amendments to create a formal response to in the form of a SWNI board approval. And the rationale is you'll look down, you can look down at number 7, or we'll talk about number 7 while these are being passed out. The nature of the amendments, if you look through them, the bulk of them will fit in one way or another under the overarching 2 motions that SWNI Land Use has brought to the SWNI board for approval over the last 2 years. So at this point, the SWNI Land Use Committee felt really it's time just for the neighborhood associations and or individuals to then take it upon themselves now to look at these amendments and decide what you feel passionate about or what you can live with. Because the cold hard facts are the residential infill program is going to move forward and will be endorsed and put into place by the city council. So our 2 motions are, I summarized them in 7 under 2 sub-bullets. And again, it fits around the area of smart density. The infill we felt would be best cascaded off of our town centers, and that was the original game plan in RIP. And it just expanded from there. The second point was a motion that we sent through, I think it was in January, this recently here, and that we wanted the city to not rush and get the stamp on RIP before they got the anti-displacement action plan up and running. There is just an open case for gentrification to happen in certain neighborhoods or what they call census tracts here in the city. So we really wanted to see that happen. Also, House Bill 2001 has a rules advising committee that has a lot of work to get done to really write out the specific ground rules for SB 2001. Right. So that's it. I know there's a lot of passion around RIP, and you know, the message from the Land Use Committee is we put our motions through to the board. They're relatively high level, put an umbrella over a lot of what you see in these amendments, and we respectfully ask that your individual neighborhoods begin to take this under consideration for input. March 12th is the big meeting, so the input be online. I have the notes here from on our report tonight where to get hold. My name and or phone number is on the front, so please contact me directly if you have any questions on how you might, because we're going to be tight on schedule here tonight. So
also, what I would encourage you to do is individually write to email or send a letter to the city council, all of them, and tell them what you think about density, which right now they're considering allowing 6 to 8 plexes on every single lot that isn't excluded for earthquake reasons or watershed reasons. In other words, it was supposed to be duplexes, maybe triplexes. Now they're getting pushed to go to 6 and 8 plexes. They need to know if that's what you would like in your neighborhood. They aren't saying that they will go in corners or in city centers or along corridors. They're saying on every lot. So if you care about that, you need to write, it doesn't have to be lengthy, you need to email them a letter and tell them as a citizen what you think. You have until the 12th. I encourage you to do it faster and send it to them directly. You will find that the planning department wants you to put it on the map, but actually the commissioners said in a meeting they preferred to get it directly. That's what I would say to finish this up. Thank you very much, Gary. All right, let's move on to equity and inclusion. Laura? Okay.
I have a best friend, I've known him 39 years, and he's currently been extremely ill. He almost died February 12th. So, let me find my glasses. I wasn't at the last equity meeting that we had on Monday. I've been visiting him every 2 weeks. He went from the ER to hospital to nursing home, but he's not showing improvement, so that's been weighing on my mind. And also just the relevation of how our committee work has been, well, what I would call misappropriated to be included in a grant to fund somebody's position. It's given me a lot to think about in terms of the Beaver Festival, and I haven't signed the agreement. I have to seek some advice. We're forming a citywide organization of minority women with similar concerns, so that's pretty much, I don't know, Sylvia attended the equity meeting, and I don't know, do you have anything to add, or?
I felt that the committee members that were there were extremely excited about the festival and the grant that they received, and they were thinking about ways that they could help and promote it and get people involved, talk about it at their neighborhood, so they were very excited. And then we also selected another Oregon Humanities conversation for June, so.
Do you know what that was, or?
Well, we've selected, we gave some options to Oregon Humanities, and now they're checking in with their folks, so we'll let you know. The next one is on May 4th, and it's called Where Are You From? And it's exploring identity and belonging when you live in Oregon, so.
So you selected Oregon Humanities for March?
No, we won't have one in March.
Oh, okay.
The person who was going to do one couldn't
So
respond.
the next one is May, and then there'll be a one.
And then we'll do one in June.
We had 4 of those Oregon Humanities conversations last year with very nice attendance. A lot of people had good things to say about it. We've got 4 scheduled for this year. We've already done one, which is last 2.
We just finished, the second one was last week with about 27 people, I think. It was very well attended.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Now, the next committee is Murphy, and she, oops, sorry,
Gary, a real quick question.
Bruce, go ahead.
Thank you. March 12th, that's what, a council hearing?
City council hearing.
Okay, and whatever happened to that letter that we put forth about waiting, they disregarded that, they're gonna go ahead with RIP? That was your,
It's on the very last, so it showed up as an amendment. They listed, flip all the way over to the back, and I've highlighted it. I actually didn't highlight, but you can see it, it's about halfway. 14, determine system-wide impacts. It kind of fits along there. They chose Senate Bill 534 instead of House Bill 2001, but kind of fits that mode. There was a complementary bill written, so. And the anti-displacement is the other one that had to do with timing. So you can see our input was, what do you feel like, Leslie? It's captured to some extent there.
Yeah, we've been down testifying, Bruce, and reflecting what SWNI wants and I think what a lot of individuals want. And what's happened, I think, is that the city council have people that are lobbying them that want the density everywhere, and they want the higher flex approach. They're not listening to us. I mean, I went to a private meeting with Commissioner Hardesty's policy advisor, and he was very dismissive of any of the common sense ideas we talked about, like rolling it out more slowly, putting it on corners, putting it in Townsend corridors, very dismissive of it. So they aren't listening, even though lots of people have sent in testimony.
okay, so then one other question I wanted, in regards to this, you want us to take this back to our neighborhood association, like ours is the 9th, and then they have to contact the city,
Leslie's advising to just contact.
That's what I'm
City.
advising, and we can send you the links, the city council commissioner links, so if people want to send them an email as opposed to a written letter, they'll have both choices.
Okay, I'll check it.
But the email at the 12th.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? All right, let's move on. Excuse me, sorry.
Can you specify who you were just referring to when you said they were dismissing?
I would say Amanda Fritz is not supportive of the rep. In fact, she's made that, she put that on her Facebook and she's put it on the record. I would say that the mayor came out 10 days ago and said he was very much for the rep, and he also was in support of 6 to 8 plexes on any lot that could sustain it. That's what he said. Hardesty said she wasn't in favor of 6 to 8 plexes because the RIP has nothing to do with affordability. I think we all thought that it was gonna have to do with affordability, and now the city council has decided it doesn't have to do with affordability. So she said because this piece of legislation has nothing to do with affordability and we're not addressing it, I'm not gonna vote for 6 to 8 plexes everywhere because that ties into the affordability issue, and I want people to understand, I'm not voting on affordability. And then of course Chloe is supportive of the 6 to 8 plexes everywhere. So you've got a 2 to 2 split on that proposal, and we'll have to see what happens in March, on March 12th, because I'm sure the city council will then either have to vote, and if it's a split, I really don't know the rules, whether it dies or what happens, who the tiebreaker is, but that's where it is right now. However, the rest of it, Amanda has said very clearly, we have enough lots, enough buildable lots to take care of the 247,000, 249,000 people that are supposed to be here by 2035, so she didn't see the necessity for the RIP at all. And the other commissioners see it differently. And I can just say I was there, so that's what I heard. Okay. All right, Murphy is ill tonight. She sent me a text that I'm going to read to you about the Watershed Committee. She says, I'm calling in sick. The Watershed Committee report is as follows. We continue to work on influencing the Portland MS4 permit, which is what John said earlier tonight. BES will have a question and answer meeting on March 19th at 7 p.m. in room 30. So if you want to know about the MS4 permit and what's going on with that, please attend that meeting. It's March 19th at 7 p.m. in room 30. Libby Winter from TriMet Light Rail will also sit in at that meeting. Topics for that meeting are how does the MS4 work? So it could be an illustration and a discussion about what an MS4 permit is. And how can Watershed Committee emphasize the effect of MS4 on the Southwest? You heard last week from Al that 7,000 of the 9,000 acres that are affected by the MS4 permit are in Southwest. So we have the largest number of acreage that would be affected by it. And the other thing she said is, and stormwater management of TriMet, Light Rail, and Barber will be discussed at that meeting. So, okay, also I'm supposed to say, here's the last note, is that the Canby Street developer, what's at the back of Gabriel Park, right back there at Canby, they're having a question and answer meeting at the Multnomah Arts Center in, we're not sure what room, but 7 p.m. Do you know the room that they set it up? It's room 8. It'll be in room 8. So if you're interested in that development, they're meeting with the developer and asking questions tomorrow night in room 8. Is that what you believe is happening? Okay, all right. If you have questions about Watershed, please, you can ask them because John can answer or Tad can answer now, but that's the gist of what's going on with Watershed right now. John?
Repeat the date and time of the MS4 meeting?
It's going to be March 19th at 7 p.m.
It's the Watershed Committee meeting.
Right.
We're going to have the person, I believe the person in charge of the compliance section of BES, which is the one that applies for the MS4 permit, and I believe one of the Watershed, they've done some changes. It's Jennifer Devlin, and I think she got some sort of promotion, so she's doing more work on all the watersheds in Portland. she'd been our watershed representative for a number of years. She was moved over to Columbia SLU, and they've just made some changes at BES. So Jennifer and the head of the compliance departments are coming on the 19th to have a question and answer about MS4.
Thank you.
Any questions about that? All right, let's move on. Miss Patty, the schools committee.
Yeah. Thank you for the SWNI grant. We're just very excited about it. And I think at the last meeting I told you about the Code Squad initiative. And so spring term we'll be offering Code Squad at Jackson Middle School after-school program and also at Robert Gray Middle School. We're in the process of looking for and hiring an instructor for each of those classes. And then also letting you guys know and let everybody in the neighborhood know, if you have any kids, it's open to all kids as an after-school program, free. It's sliding scale, but basically it's free. And so just let the kids know, and I'll be getting out information. It's on our website, and so anyway, pretty excited about that. Second thing that we're doing, and I'll put these on the table over there, but it's called Connecting. We're going out to the community and wanting community, parents, neighbors, students, anyone, come give the education, or the schools committee, information about what's working, what's not working, what kind of insights do you have, what would you like to see, just general information so that we can add to and develop our action plan for the next year. And so we're having 2 sessions. One is Wednesday, March 11th, and the other is Monday, March 16th. And so anyway, that information, if you want to get it out to your folks, it'll be there, and I believe it's also in the newsletter.
It's on the, yes,
And
on
it's
the
on
calendar
here.
page.
Okay. Let's see, and, I think that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for the schools committee? Patty McMahon? All right. Don?
Want to report on what is happening with regard to the school board possibly not having Wilson on their bond measure?
Yes. Oh, do I have anything? No, I thought you were gonna report.
Well, I can summarize very briefly. Erica Myers, she's got a new name now, who's been the business manager at Wilson for a long time, put out a newsletter, a note. It basically said that the school district, the school board is thinking about backing off of high schools first and going to other schools later and deferring some of the high schools' involvement in this. I will send it to Sylvia, she could send it out to everybody, because I think that's the easiest way to define it, but, you know, folks need to get involved with talking to Scott, or Andrew Scott, and the rest of the school board about this, because, as usual, we're at the bottom end of the milk fest.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate it. Any other comments on the schools? Okay, we'll move on to Parks and Community Center. Steve Mullinex.
Thank you. Yes, some medium good news on the budget front. Parks and Rec submitted their requested budget for the upcoming fiscal year. And the good news is that according to the mayor's guidance, it's a no-cut budget. So we're not going to go through the same, slash and burn that we went through last year. That's good. However, it's a, as Parks says, they continue to operate in a declining service environment, meaning that there's more demand for the increasing demand for the services under a flat budget. Okay, some work is continuing on identifying long-term sustainable funding sources, and there are specific requests in the current budget that support working on that long-term goal. Coming up this summer, Parks Committee is going to take our show on the road. That is, we're going to have our meetings in the neighborhood, in some neighborhood parks. I believe that's May, June, July, August. If you have something you want to show us, you want to come down and make a neighborhood party out of a Parks Committee meeting in your local park, let me or John Papero know. You have some special thing that's, a bridge that needs to be fixed, fine, or endangered wildlife habitat, anything like that. We may even do like a weekend tour and we're gonna try and line up some help from Portland Parks and Rec, so we're better informed. This is a change from our usual practice, which is just to go and have the meetings in the park, which was good, but we're gonna try and look a little deeper into those parks, and we appreciate your suggestions.
Any questions for Steve? Thank you, Steve. Thanks for the work that you all do. I'm sorry, go ahead, Bruce.
The details about these meetings, you're gonna have that in the paper?
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, all right, let's move on to transportation. Dave?
All right, ODOT's hosting an open house tomorrow in the gym at Multnomah Arts Center about the jug handle project. There's also TriMet's hosting an online open house about Southwest Corridor project. They're taking comments until March 27th as far as overall line design and specific design for stations, and encourage people to comment on as many stations as they want. And the only other issue is, I got word from PBOT yesterday regarding the extended shoulders on collector streets and possibly not being able to prevent cars from parking on those. So some of the committee's gonna have to look at and discuss.
Dave, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
You talked about comments on stations. Are you talking about stations along the
13 or 14 stations on the Max line?
Okay, and they're asking for comments about what people think about those?
Yeah, individual stations.
And when are they taking those comments?
Through March 27th, it's at trimet.org.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, John?
I would also encourage you to find some way to comment to TriMet on the transportation connections that they're evaluating in this conceptual plan. And I would say the one other thing that's of some import, Murphy mentioned it in the Watershed. I would encourage you also to comment on issues related to Watershed. TriMet, for the first time, arrived at the meeting and admitted they're dealing with 70 acres of unconstrained water off the current right-of-ways, and they've got 15 more acres that they're adding to it. And the last thing they're gonna do before they get, the only time we're gonna see Watershed is in the final EIS. They're not sharing any information with us how they're gonna deal with all that water until the last step of the whole thing. And Al Iverson and I talked about it last week, and it's basically like building a house and then deciding how you're gonna design your foundation. It's Al's description, and it's totally accurate. So if you can raise that issue on their website, please do.
Mary Ann?
Well, we talked about it a little bit at the Transportation Committee meeting, but Crestwood is definitely going to comment on this because they're have all the station access projects listed in the report, but none of them are funded. And I think personally it still over-relies on park and rides to generate the ridership, which just adds, there's 2 park and rides proposed in Portland, so that's just more cars going through my neighborhood to get to these park and rides, and that's not what this was supposed to do. But we have several station access projects, so it's important for my neighborhood to prioritize, because if you have them in a row, hopefully they'll be funded in that priority order rather than letting somebody else choose which order to do them in. Transit connections are going to be critical. They're not making any promises about even taking the bus to these stations. So you need to be thinking about that. And I talked to Virginia last week. it's a change that now they're all surface lots for park and rides other than Bridgeport Village. That's a huge change. And so it's obvious that they're cutting corners by making them surface lots, but there's still a lot of questions on whether or how we can comment to make this benefit our neighborhood and not just have them just run right through us.
Melanie?
No.
Oh, excuse me, Don, is your card still up?
Sorry?
Okay.
Turn it so you can see it.
Sure, all right. Anybody else?
Pay attention to this, the connections, the funicular bridge. There's no provision at the upper end of that for figuring out how the buses are gonna land and so on. Totally ignored that. They totally ignored that same thing at 53rd. Red Electric isn't in there at all, even though we've got the regional transportation plan, so it shows going down across the bridge there. And in the footnotes, it says they may eliminate the flyover of Barber from Capitol Highway. And, you know, this is just another money-saving thing, but it changes the demand, the demand, you know, and Hillsdale businesses are so very concerned about that. So there's a lot of wiggle stuff in there. Be sure and read the footnotes, because there's a lot of stuff there that they're trying to make provision. Oh, we said it, but no one knew it because it was in the footnotes.
We're very fortunate. We have some very talented people watching the transportation issues and keeping us advised of what we should do or what we could do or what's actually going through without much comment. So I want to thank all of those who are in transportation for the time and effort that you bring to our board to try to keep us abreast of the transportation issues. Anything more for Dave Martin? Okay, then let's move on to the nominating committee. On page 28, you have the rules around putting together a SWNI not personnel, but a nominating committee. I made a lot of phone calls and I found 3 people who are willing to serve as a nominating committee for the election of officers in May. One is Gary Rundy, who's sitting right here. He's been your land use person for quite some time. Another is Catherine, who's done this before. She's agreed to do it. And then we have Mike Lindman, who's the treasurer for Maplewood. He has agreed to also be part of the nominating committee. What happens is right there on page 28 tells you what it is. So what I'd like to do, and the executive committee has discussed these candidates, found that they would be excellent candidates. So I need a motion from the board to approve the appointment of these people to serve on the nominating committee. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, John moved and Ron seconded. Discussion or questions? Laura?
Well, I'm just a little concerned that, you know, it's the usual suspects. And I'd like to see maybe people who haven't really expressed, you know, a certain bias and, you know, because all 3 of these people have been very vocal. And I'd like to just see maybe, I don't know, different faces on the
Do
nomination.
you have suggested names?
Nope.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what.
It's just I look at these and I go,
If you have some
Can they be
suggested
neutral?
names, please let me know, Laura, and we can come back to the board and open up the committee if that's what people want to do.
Well, I wonder if anybody else on the board has the same, and maybe nobody agrees with that, so.
Okay, Jackie?
I'd like you to repeat the names because I was
Okay.
writing the first one.
It's
and I was
Gary
so
Rundy, right here, and Catherine Christensen, and Mike Lindman, who's the treasurer from Maplewood. He's also on our candidates forum committee.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, comments? All right, all in favor of approving the people to the nominating committee, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, we have Laura. And any abstentions?
There's another,
She needs to come to the table.
Janet, I'm a no.
Come to the table. Come to the
Oh,
table to
Eric,
vote.
would you mind, can you put my card up? Eric, I bequeathed my chair to Eric. So I'm a no, Janet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes. And these people will have a an orientation meeting in the next week or so and get on with asking people. Now, what I would say about this, having been through this process a few times, is if you have the names of people that you'd like to see as an officer, or if you'd like to serve as an officer, please approach one of the members of the nominating committee and let them know that. They're gonna make phone calls to all the board members and ask you what your interest might be for an officer position this year. But don't be shy. If you've got somebody outside of this group that's in your neighborhood that you think would make a good officer, please let the nominating committee know. I will tell you this, I am trying to find us a treasurer with the same kind of credentials that Charlie had, because it's the way, it's a big relief, I think, to all of us when we know that every single monthly report is thoroughly looked at and categorized appropriately from a CPA point of view. We may not find a treasurer like that, but that's my particular goal in helping the nominating committee find us a new treasurer, because Lee has been wonderful, but he said he was only interim. All right. All right, so then the next thing on the schedule is the personnel committee, and I'm gonna turn it over to Janet to discuss that.
Thank you. So Personnel Committee, as many of you remember, myself, I'm the chair, Kim Silverman, Marianne Fitzgerald. We've had a couple of meetings so far, and I'll talk about those in a minute. But our report is in the very back of the packet, page 29. I apologize, I think it's pretty small print. And let me know if you can't hear me over there, John and Catherine, if I need you stand up. So if I need to stand up, let me know. Our interest is in the personnel policy topics that are coming forward that really need to have review and analysis. And those are essentially kind of in the middle of the memo that you're looking at. The SWNI personnel policies related to family and medical leave, extended leave, employee classifications and timekeeping, employee conduct, and then issues around harassment, discrimination, retaliation, and then complaint procedures. So it's a chunk of personnel policy that really needs updating, review. And so our recommendation that we're bringing forward at this point is to hire Renee Starr, who did this work in 2011. And we would ask, she's let us know that she would charge a flat fee of $500 to review and recommend revisions to the policies. $550, which is incredibly reasonable in terms of cost. And she did similar work for Neighbors West, Northwest at a very similar price for personnel policy review. So we know that she's very familiar with neighborhood systems and has worked with SWNI in the past. So our motion is to approve that. It's a motion through the committee, and then
It doesn't need a second.
it doesn't need a second. So for discussion purposes, I just want to say, hopefully many of you have gotten phone calls, messages, contacts, emails, asking for input and information by March 5th. We're hoping to have information regarding SWNI staff performance in 2019. Were there noteworthy staff accomplishments that you want to call out to be part of the employee review? What kinds of assistance did staff provide that exceeded, maybe met, or maybe didn't exceed, or meet your expectations? And then any organizational improvements that you would recommend. So part of the work we want to do is look at all that input. Sylvia can be our keeper of much of the input, or you're certainly welcome in these conversations. I was in contact with a couple board members, and they gave me lots of notes over the phone, so I have handwritten notes as well on these. So we're looking for an approval of this item.
I'm going to comment that we have $4,000 budgeted for professional services this year. We've already committed as a board to $2,000 to get our 990s done. So we still have $2,000 left in that category. I want you to know that before you vote on whether you approve or disapprove this expenditure. Okay. All in favor of
There's
approving?
another comment here.
Oh, sorry, Jackie, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to put it down.
Okay, I did the same thing. All in favor of approving an expenditure to hire Renee Starr? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Who does this exactly apply to? This is who works with Sylvia? Is that what it is?
Right.
Yeah.
Because obviously it doesn't apply to us.
Right, it doesn't apply to you, yeah. Kate?
I'm reading this, and in the paragraph that begins Renee, near that's fourth from the bottom, it says that we're asking her to present a draft proposal, and then right below it, you're asking us to approve the contract before the proposal has been submitted. Maybe I'm confused.
Proposed policies. So in other words, she's
Oh, a draft proposal of policy
Correct.
changes.
Yes, so we come to the board, yeah.
Oh,
And my-
sorry, it
That's what
it
the contract
wasn't
is.
clear.
Yeah, and then potentially would come to the board in April, depending on how much work, there were many changes in personnel policies in the Oregon legislature over the last few years. And
Got it.
really, it's a lot of work. So it might even come to the board, perhaps April, perhaps in May.
Any other questions? Very good question, Katie. Nice clarification. All right, Laura.
I got a question. So this is a personnel committee, and Sylvia's part of the personnel,
She's staffing the committee.
and she's staffing the committee. I don't know, I've never heard of that kind of arrangement, because it pertains to her. I mean, if it's
So,
someone.
so under the policies, personnel policies, I'm in charge of the staff.
Right.
And then the board and personnel committee does my review. So, right now, I will do the write-up for the staff reviews, and we're taking input from people on their experiences. And then I'll present those write-ups to the committee, review them, answer any questions, and then they'll do me.
Well, I just have concerns about the fairness of that process, sort of, without bias, but.
What is your concern, Laura? Because we've done this for several years,
I
but I
know.
want to hear what you're worried about.
Well, maybe we haven't been that successful all these several years, and we need a change.
You mean in the personnel policies or the
Well,
people
just
that
in
provide the
terms of
services?
who's involved in the process, if it will directly impact them.
So I think that's why you have an option to talk to various personnel committee if you have some concerns.
I'm going to call on Mary Ann and then Katie. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Mary Ann?
So you were gonna talk about the meetings that we have scheduled?
Yeah, we actually have a number of meetings coming up after we met this evening, but then March 5th, April 3rd, upcoming meetings, more time for input. If you want very confidential input, be in touch with Sylvia. You can send that directly to Sylvia if you, regarding staff performance. So those comments can go directly to Sylvia, or you can respond to the conversation or opportunities for email with the
So
committee.
I'm not sitting in on the meeting where they're doing my eval.
That's what I was
And
gonna
then
say.
that happens after, maybe that was part of
It
it.
We're
has,
meeting
it has a
separate.
chilling effect if comments that we have are gonna be impacting you, then why would someone share that with you? They would rather share it with a neutral party.
Right, and that's why you have
That's
the
why you have a
committee.
committee. You can send your comments to any of the members of the committee.
Just as they feel right.
Yeah, just to address Laura's concerns, it is typical for a chief staff officer to work with a committee, an independent committee, on the review of policies, because it is the chief staff officer's responsibility to implement those policies. The reviews are entirely different than the reviews, the personal evaluations of performance are different and separate from a review of personnel policies.
Thank you. Any other comments, suggestions? All right, we're gonna go back to the motion, which is to approve or disapprove the $550 to hire someone to give us good advice on what policies we might need to change. All in favor of the $550, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right. We are at 8:44. We have one more piece of business, and I'm going to give that piece of business 10 minutes. And what I'm going to do is advise the board that we received a few letters from different non-members in our community who want to ask for 10 years worth of document records from SWNI. They're taxpayers and they want to see these records to determine whether, to determine whether the funds that we're using and the programs that we have are consistent with what the city has contracted with us for. That's a better way of putting what they actually put in the letter, but they're asking for 10 years. All of you received the initial demand for 10 years worth of records, and you also received in the mail my response to that request for 10 years of records, which was based on my research and the executive committee's consideration of the demand for the 10 years. So this is what, Mary Ann said she didn't know anything about it. That's what this is about. All right? You can, go ahead, Rob.
So I have a motion that says I move that the letter sent to Ms. Siller Webb in response to the record request be reviewed by committee since it has numerous errors and is in direct conflict with SWNI bylaws, documented the document management policy that I just passed around, our bylaws, and our contract with Civic Life. The committee will recommend to the board what records should be provided and what should be given access for review.
All right, okay, this is a complex issue, so,
There's a motion on the board.
we don't have a second yet on the motion.
I'll
So-
second it.
All right, it's seconded. So, board, this is a complex issue. There's apparently documentation we haven't seen before that Rob is suggesting we look at. It is late in the evening. I would like to suggest that perhaps we do a motion to postpone to address this next month after we've had a chance to read what's suggested and to look at that letter that I sent out again.
I'll second that motion.
All right,
She can't make a motion, so.
you have
I'll also move,
to postpone until next month.
postpone until next month.
All right, do we have a second on the postponement?
Well, point of order, I think
Sure.
we've got a motion on the
Right.
table already.
Right.
We should address
Can
that.
can I just say that part of this records request has timelines? So if there is mistakes in the letter, by kicking this down the road, we are actually putting ourselves in jeopardy of legal action or of Civic Life or whoever. So I'm concerned that if we just push this out for another month, I'm asking to form a committee to review it. Not that we review it tonight, but we form a committee that can review it and make recommendations next month.
Okay, Jackie?
I would like to hear the motion again slowly, Rob.
Okay.
please.
I move that the letter sent to Ms. Hiller Webb in response to her records request be reviewed by committee since it has numerous errors and is in direct conflict with SWNI bylaws, document management policy, and our bylaws, and the contract with Civic Life. The committee will recommend to the board on what records should be provided and what records should be given access for review.
Okay, I want to make a comment here about the motion, if I might.
Sure.
If we vote on your motion, we are agreeing that there are errors that are stated in the motion. And I wouldn't want to vote on that. You see, you've said.
Well, I will point out one error. This is real easy. On the second page, the letter says executive finance committee meetings are public, anyone can sit on, listen to discussion because the committee has funded decision-making power. The association has not been required to meet, to keep minutes in our bylaws. Section 7 of the executive committee, section 3A starts take minutes. The first action of that committee, executive committee, is to take minutes. So that right there is in direct violation of our bylaws. So that's just one. I could go on to others, but I don't think it's necessary. I think it'd be easy for the committee to take up the letter and to look at the Civic Life, their standards, what they require us to do in our contract, and review to make sure that we are following the policies.
I want to say something else. When this letter came, the demand for 10 years worth of records, I spent a good deal of time looking at the Chapter 65, which is the chapter at the state level that tells us as nonprofits what we're supposed to do. And the state law takes precedence over any city law. And yes, it's true. And so when I looked at that, and that letter was written with the state's admonition in mind about what we were supposed to do as a nonprofit. The only rules are written in 2005. The state chapter on public records and nonprofit records was rewritten in 2019 and became effective in 2020. So it takes precedence over anything that ONI has written on this. It's the latest law from the state, and ONI's laws are out of compliance there. I just want you guys to know that that is actually the way the law works. When the state speaks about a law, then it takes precedence over how that law should be interpreted. The second thing is, this is a complicated issue. The executive committee did discuss and confer, so we've already had a committee look at it and make a decision about what that letter should contain and how to respond. Janet?
Actually, I think Dawn was ahead of me,
Okay.
Katie.
and then Katie's card is up as well.
Okay.
Am I up?
Yeah.
What's the worst case if, say, we put this off and we get a lawsuit, what's at risk? You know, who's gonna put up the time and energy for a lawyer on the other side? You know, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, you know, this is a lot of straw in a pile, but what's there? You know, where's the horse? And, you know, you maybe want to make a big point of this, but it's a complete waste of time from my perspective, unless there's something really there that we ought to be worried about, and I don't know what that is. Please explain to me where the horse is in the room.
We do have bylaws.
I understand that, but
And we
where's
have-
the horse in the room?
Can I finish? You asked me a question. Can I finish? We have bylaws, and bylaws are tied to the ONI, to our document management that ONI requires us to put forward, to draft. And those bylaws and those records are part of our contract with Civic Life. So if Civic Life determines that we're not in compliance, they can pull our contract. So that is, it's not even a lawsuit, they could just pull our contract. I mean, I don't know if it's that egregious or not, but it seems if we have policies in place and we have bylaws, and someone wants to see the records, and some of them are obviously you can see, then we should determine which ones they can see and allow.
If I may just respond for 1 second, and that is, I've had conversations with several people having a lot to do with civic life downtown. And a lot of what they're trying to do is eliminate all the nonsense that goes on when you're trying to deal with things like this. We're basically nitpicking over stuff that's ancient history, it doesn't affect a damn thing, other than your need for seeing records from 10 years ago. To me, it's a complete waste of time.
Katie?
First, I'd like to propose a friendly amendment to take the language to say potential errors rather than just labeling them errors. Second, I did review this policy online when I saw that letter, and I respectfully disagree with you that this would supersede state law because it's more restrictive.
Well, I happen to be a lawyer, so that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, okay.
Ron?
Did we receive, can I miss seeing this letter?
I sent you a letter to the mail with a copy of the demand. Yeah, so does that ring a bell? Okay, all right.
And I propose friendly amendment.
Oh, go ahead.
I did make it.
Okay, all right, so,
Could I?
well, I have someone down here. Is it Debbie?
No, that's Marie.
Okay, Marie, do you want to come to the table and speak?
Oh, that was up from before, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
So,
John?
well, actually, I was ahead of John, so maybe.
All right. Yes, you were, Janet, go ahead.
So this is a retention record policy. It's not a public information disclosure document. So
It's the Civic.
very
Wait,
Yeah,
I'm gonna go around the table.
very clearly, personnel records are retained permanently. We would face litigation if we were to release personnel policy records. So I really think, I mean, Katie's right, there's, you know, I mean, we're looking at a situation where we would put ourselves at greater risk from my perspective.
You can't give legal advice, you're not.
I'm just saying, risk is inherent in dealing with any personnel records, and it's a retention
Or
record.
litigation that we've had, anything that's privileged cannot be
So
disclosed.
can I answer a question?
I'm
Because
gonna
that
let
was
John
basically
comment.
the question.
And then I'll let you, she's not asking a question,
No, I'm making a
she's making a
statement.
comment.
Okay.
All right, John.
The only thing I would say is there were some requests and individuals named in that records request that for me personally would involve people that are entitled to professional confidences, and whether your committee tells me to release them or not is not going to be the issue. That I will only release those on advice of state ethics council, and probably we'd have to have a court order anyway, so.
So the
All right, now,
recommendation is a recommendation to the board. So it's not, they're not demanding anything. Owning meetings, public records, this is the owning meeting public records request section. It basically outlines what can and can't be released, and that's why I'm saying the committee should look at these, everything in totality, and make recommendations to the board, because it talks about records of personalities, records pertaining to mediation. It talks about these things. So it is inclusive, it is very inclusive. So some of her requests are correct, and I'm not saying that they are correct, I'm just saying that someone should review what are, because the letter is stipulating that it's 3 years, she has 3 years to review them, and ONI does not say that, they say the records that are retained can't be reviewed. So that's just what I'm getting at.
I'm gonna, I know you guys don't wanna get caught up in what's law, but I will say this, the state law for nonprofits has been that we're to retain permanent records, minutes, motions, any action by the board is taken by the board. And we're required to disclose those documents to anyone who would like to look at them for a 3-year period. And then when those 3 years move over, then that last year drops off. Now SWNI keeps records, beautiful records, and has for a long time. They've got all the 990s, which have everything to do with financial management from 2009 going forward. We have the records for the last 3 years. They're on the website. Anybody who wants to see what motions the board took, what correspondence there was with the city, what kind of expenditures we had and where that money went, it's all online for the last 3 years. And that's what we're required to do by state law. The state law has not changed on how many years of records we're supposed to reveal. When they did their rewrite of the chapter last year, they left that 3-year period in there and they didn't change it to anything else. And they didn't say you had to retain records past 3 years. They also, and as I said in the letter that I wrote to each of you, I talked to 2 lawyers. Both of them were in the state committee that wrote that legislation, and both of them said that we do not and should not be required to disclose emails and texts between anybody here on this board, the executive director, anybody on the board. That's privileged information and private conversations. When we make a decision, we have to do it on the record as a board. So that's more information for you in relationship to what Rob has, his motion on the floor. He's got a motion and a second. Melanie.
I might simply be confused about this because we've talked both about retention of records and requests for records. Retention I don't have an issue with. The issue that I'm concerned about on requests for records is because there are 5 types, as you just described, that cannot be revealed. That means you'd have to go through every record, and so you're looking at huge amounts of labor going through all of these records, all of this correspondence. And it says neighborhood associations and district coalitions may charge reasonable fees for making these records available. So the amount of cost just to go through every single record, looking at hundreds of hours.
Sure, some of them should be easy, like minutes for 10 years, and all of them aren't online. So that should be easy to give.
I'm just saying that it says you have to, that they can charge fees.
Yeah, and I'm saying that some of them will be very easy to give. And that's what the committee should do, is look at the request, make a reasonable assumption of what has been done. I don't agree with Leslie on the 3-year. I think the more we have imposed a greater level of restriction on ourselves to have a longer length of retention of documents, and because ONI requires us to allow people to see those documents, and I don't understand I understand the personnel and I understand all that, and those should be denied if the committee decides that's what should happen. But I don't see how openness of seeing these documents that are of record are a problem.
Like minutes.
Like minutes, like agendas, like executive minutes, executive agendas.
You weren't denied those, right?
I didn't make the request.
Oh, who made the request?
Shannon Hill-Webb made the request, and now 5 or 6 other people have made the request, I understand.
All friends of Shannon's or Marie's.
Yeah.
That's irrelevant, the members.
No,
of
it's
the-
not irrelevant, they are non-members, they're not on the board, and they're people that
They're
are
members
within
of
the
SWNI.
orbit of those two members. But they're entitled to write their letters, and we're responding to them. So here's the question, board, do you want to pass a motion to form a committee to look at this material and come to a different decision? Or would you like to do something else, or would you like to vote no on the motion and stand by what the executive committee has already spent 2 or 3 weeks
That's not the
on?
motion, the motion is just to do the recommendation, you're really framing this.
I would like to motion, Rob, because I am not prepared to vote on what you motion until I give it some very careful thought.
That's fine.
So I would like to motion to move it. Well, wait, what was your motion, Katie?
I was just amending his motion to say, establish a committee to review the letter for potential errors in content. I have been talking about retention of records versus the reveal of records. And the retention of records, I believe there were misstatements in the letter pursuant to this.
Okay,
That's,
so the, Jen, can you read the motion?
Well, I'm gonna have to ask,
Did you not get it?
I did not get it, I mean, it's,
Would you read the motion again? I'm sorry, this is the
Sure.
first time,
Yeah,
but we don't have it in
secretary.
writing.
Sure. And your motion was this potential errors, right?
potential errors.
Correct me if I missed this. Move that the letter sent to Ms. Hill Rev in response to the records request be reviewed by the committee since it has potential errors and is in direct conflict with the SWNI bylaws, document management policy, zoning bylaws, and our contract with Civic by. The committee will recommend to the board on what records should be provided or given access for review.
All right, I'm gonna allow 2 more comments and then we'll go to Mary Ann and then Steve.
I'm just, again, I just glanced at the letter earlier in the meeting, and some of that information was privileged, and, I mean, under executive committee. And at the time, we had a lot of people well-versed in what's covered because of personnel issues and other things in the executive session. And so I'm hesitant to approve a committee, but I don't know who's on the committee, how the committee's gonna be handled, and how things that were done under state statute for executive committee, and it says right here that we comply with state statute for, so I'm just very worried that this committee will not abide by the rules that we were working under when we did the work.
So making recommendations, right?
Steve,
The,
go ahead.
the motion, if I understand correctly, says that that letter is in conflict with the bylaws. I don't believe that it states how it is. There's no information about that. I would have to vote no on that basis as well.
Okay, I've had, thank you, Steve. All right, we've had our final 2 comments. I would like you to give you a moment to think about this, whether you vote for the motion to form this committee or whether you vote against it. And I'm going to ask you to raise hands because I'm not sure a voice vote will do it. All right, all in favor of approving the motion, raise your hand. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed to the motion, raise your hands. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and I don't vote. Any abstaining? All right, Ron is abstaining and Kim is abstaining. And Kendall, all right.
I didn't get the 5 yes votes, did you, Jen?
Davis?
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was Rob,
Mary,
Marie, Laura, Katie, and Tad.
okay,
Debbie, did you raise your
Oh.
hand? Yes.
And Debbie, were you a yes?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Did I
That's
6 then?
that's
This
6.
is 6. So we
Should
had,
we do it again?
No.
no, we know, we've
No,
got.
I mean raise our hands, because clearly there's problems counting.
Clearly, all opposed to the
Motion's
motion,
defeated.
raise your hand. We've got the yeses. All opposed to the motion, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 opposed. So the motion fails. Do I have a motion for adjournment? We're running late and we have to get out of this room, put our
I
tables
move we
back.
adjourn.
Second. All right.
Can
all
I
in
just
favor?
say one thing? Please pick up the voter registration things. There's 5